that one's crazy. So
good evening. So we're continuing to look at the Shantideva 6th chapter, the chapter on patience. Last week, we continued to look at the sub-outline on ensuring that the mind stays virtuous and does not come under the influence of the afflictions, in particular that of anger, whilst engaging in the accumulation of engaging in one's livelihood, so in one's career. And here what we specifically looked at the gathering of material gain or material conditions by means of our livelihood. Because this is something that beings need to do to ensure that they can sustain themselves and look after their family and so forth. But how this is done is so important. So we looked at last week, or Shantideva guided us to see last week, that all that we strive for in this life, in particular in the context of material gain, but as well as gain as in terms of reputation and so forth, all of this will be lost at death. It will be as if we have been robbed. A burglar has broken into our house and stolen everything, broken into our accounts and stolen everything. That is how it will be at the time of death. We will leave this world naked and empty-handed. And the meaning of what we are looking at here is to recognize that what we strive for, what we seem to value, the things that are so bound up in this life, that we need to ensure that our engagement is free of the afflictions as best we can. In particular, we should not be guided by strong afflictions, those of deceiving others, cheating others, or miserliness, or lack of contentment, or greed rather. Rather, if in these cases we will have spent this life accumulating a mountain of non-virtue and wasted the opportunity to accumulate virtue. So the meaning of last week was to look at what has value and what does not, and to look in particular at how one accumulates all that is required. Continuing then in a similar vein, the 60th verse. What if while living off material gain, non-virtue is exhausted and merit accumulated? Does anger for the sake of material gain not consume merit and create non-virtue? Look in the first two lines, and these first two lines present really a very common argument. So therefore it's good to understand the argument and thereby the response, or thereafter the response. Because this is such a common argument, we'll almost certainly either hear it or probably make it to ourselves. So the first two lines. What if while living off material gain, non-virtue is exhausted and merit accumulated? So here the argument that has been made is I need to not merely sustain myself, but I need to accumulate wealth. And accumulating wealth, there is great virtue in doing, or great benefit in doing this. And so here, justification is being presented for striving in the accumulation of abundance or opulence, abundance. And the argument that is being made, by striving to accumulate material abundance, this life will be comfortable, I'll have excellent conditions around me. And of course, it's not merely for my own comfort, but I will be able to have a long and healthy life because I'll be able to eat well, afford good medical care, and so forth. So therefore, this life will be comfortable, it will be healthier, and it will be probably longer. So therefore, there will be so many benefits in this life. And of course, I'll be happier with this material abundance. But I'm not only thinking about the happiness of this life, of course, I'm also thinking about my spiritual development. So my focus, of course, will be on future lives, although my energy will be going into accumulating wealth. Because it's through this wealth, I'll be able to purify past non-virtues and accumulate extensive virtue through making offerings, for example, offerings to the 3 jewels, offering to the needy, and thereby alleviate the suffering of others and help the 3 jewels and so forth. So this really is something very good to do, to accumulate such wealth. I imagine you recognize what's presented here as this qualm, this doubt, is a very common way of thinking in the world. And it's a common way of thinking amongst Dharma practitioners as well, that this way of thinking can be mixed with or presented from a Dharma perspective, saying that I do need to, of course, look after my precious human rebirth, and I need to do it so that I can accumulate and purify. So from a person will present this view, saying, I need to look after this life, and to ensure future lives go well. And to do this, I need to accumulate an abundance of wealth. So His Holiness often addresses this point and emphasizes that those who strive to accomplish material gain, that is the focus of their lives. It's the focus of what they think about, what they talk about, and it's what consumes their energy. They lack thereby the time and the space to cultivate their inner world, to transform their inner world. They may hear teachings, may attend events, but they will not be able to apply themselves to the teachings they hear. They will, where the starkest difference will come, is they may have a recognition of the various great qualities of the Dharma, such as the need to cultivate love and compassion, and even have some aspiration for that, but they will not lack the mental space to make this the focus of their lives, and thereby it will not be genuine love and compassion that drives them, but rather the ongoing material gain, development of prestige and so forth, or reputation and so forth. And of course, in they're striving to accomplish material gain, they will encounter many obstacles. And not having a focus on mental transformation, they will respond in the common way, the afflicted way, with obstacles. Arguments will be common in the life, conflict, maybe even violence. So this is something we know in world. We know in our own the people we know directly, perhaps in our own individual lives too, and we see it in society. And we also see it expressed in relationships between nations too. So as a response to this motivation, to this expression, especially looking from the Dharma perspective, this expression of, I need to cultivate material wealth so that I can develop inner good qualities, purify, accumulate, and so forth, so as to then address this confusion of what is really a dominant, ordinary, commonplace motivation that is mixed or justified by means of the Dharma, comes a response in the third and fourth line. Does anger for the sake of material gain not consume merit and create non-virtue? The reply presents the actual situation. Does anger for the sake of material gain not consume merit and create non-virtue? So here, this confusion in the questioner is being responded to with a rhetorical question. But let's unpack that so that we understand it at deeper levels. So whilst accumulating wealth, one will, two general areas that one will encounter. One is one's mind will be seldom on the Dharma and often away from the Dharma. Seldom on the Dharma in that there'll be few opportunities where one will express one's wealth and do so with sincerity and with a real focus on the needs of others. Those opportunities, even if one has an abundance, will be few and far between. There may be many opportunities, but the taking of them will be few and far in between. Why? Because the mind is primarily engaged in gaining ever more wealth and prestige, protecting what one has and adding to it. So one can move up the social ladder, the ranking amongst one's friends and colleagues and so forth. So therefore the mind is primarily in a very ordinary place. Seldom are the minds of the Dharma dominant enough to guide one's behavior in acts of accumulation of virtue. And where this will become abundantly clear is when one encounters obstacles in one's accumulation of wealth. So in one's daily life, in business and so forth. Obstacles will be encountered often, and the way of reacting to them will be the commonplace way, the way perhaps you have been throughout your life. In other words, in an afflicted manner. Obstacles will come, anger will come. Anger of a pushing away, a rejecting of perhaps another person or a situation. And through this, non-virtue is accumulated. And what we see here is that because this person has as their priority the accumulation of wealth, they have an understanding of the Dharma and they justify their focus by means of the Dharma, but they're not investing the time required to cultivate the Dharma they perhaps have read or heard within. And thereby, they respond to life's challenges, the challenges in their workplace, in the ordinary way, in the afflicted way, and thereby continue to accumulate non-virtue. And what little virtue they have accumulated, that is consumed by the far greater non-virtue. This then should lead us to recognize the need to cultivate the Dharma within, so that one can cultivate patience. Because it's not sufficient to merely hear that one needs to respond with patience. One needs to train one's mind so that one actually can, initially in an intentional way, later it will arise spontaneously. But one needs to have the mental space to train one's mind. And a mind focused on material gain and comfort does not have the space to train. The meaning comes down to recognizing or coming to truly recognize what a balanced level of wealth is, and thereby not striving for much more beyond that. So as to rather have a more, work-life balance, so that one can have the time and energy to focus on what is truly important, the cultivating of Dharma within, and thereby one will be able to genuinely respond to life's challenges and hardships in an unafflicted manner, in a way that is patient, loving, and kind. Imagine what's presented here is quite easy to understand, but it's difficult to actually take it to heart in the way that it's meant. For a bodhisattva, for them this is very easy, because of all the prior training they've already done. So they will read a verse like this, hear a teaching on a verse like this, and they'll immediately be able to evaluate their life and refocus if necessary. For ourselves, even evaluating our life is difficult, because we still need to challenge deeply held misapprehensions over what actually has abiding value and what's value is deceptive. So the situation for ourselves and bodhisattvas is still vastly different. And for us, this is difficult because we see having a lack of abundance as a personal fault, as a failure. If we do not have an abundance in terms of our material possessions, in how we live our life, where we go, what we do, what we cannot do, we end up feeling like we have failed. We worry about what others say about us. We compare ourselves to others and feel second place, feel like we haven't achieved. We look at what others can afford, what others can experience, and we think, oh, I cannot. And then we yearn for that. This comes down to what one values. And here a bodhisattva has trained well and looked at what has abiding value and what does not. And they've recognized that the pleasures enjoyed in this life are fine, but striving for them, pursuing them, this is deceptive. Rather, being aware of the stream of lives ahead and the benefit that will come for lives to come by focusing on the accumulation of virtue, this is far better than consuming one's virtue through endeavors in terms of cultivating a wealth and spending that wealth to gain experiences and pleasures which are fleeting. So bodhisattvas thereby, they see what is value is the accumulation of virtue. They see the accumulation of virtue as of great importance, which means, in this context, having a balance in their life. That means they have time to deal with their mind. And in their activities, they are able to engage in those activities whilst being aware of their mind. This they can do because they are not obsessing with this life's pleasures and this life's problems. Thereby, they can live in a balanced way. Their mind is balanced. And therefore, the practice of patience can easily be cultivated within them. What we've been called to here, really as a basis to be able to train our mind and to cultivate genuine patient outlook, is challenging. It's difficult to do, because what we are being asked to do is to develop a view that society considers extreme, radical. It's contrary to the values of society. What one is being asked to do is to look at what really matters, and from the perspective of lives to come, and the perspective of developing of true human potential. Society does not think like that. Society values things which are fleeting, transitory in nature, seeing that the happiness one can experience in daily life as being something having abiding value. So if one wants to strive to become a bodhisattva, turn away from the afflictions, and do so in a wholehearted, committed way, means adopting views which are in accordance with reality, but from society's perspective, from people that you know, these are radical views, extreme views. Therefore, to do so places challenges on oneself. And that those challenges of trying to rebalance one's life, that can lead to questions from others, criticism from others. When this happens, in the previous verses, we've looked at how to deal with what others have to say and think. We need to thereby also be patient and open-minded with them, but also recognize that doing what is right is not always easy. But at the very least, what we need to do is, in our activities, we need to try to reduce the non-virtue we do. And if one cannot make radical change in one's life, at least try to accumulate as little non-virtue as possible. In other words, do the very best that we can. I really want to acknowledge the challenges of turning away from cultural norms, from acting in a way that society may consider a little strange, or having values that are outside of social norms. So people live in different communities and walk through different parts of society. So some may be completely open and accepting, others somewhat less. So certainly I understand that there can be challenges when someone says, for example, "Oh, you're always going to teachings," or you every day you're spending time on meditating. What about me? Where are you for your family or your friends? You're ignoring us. You're just putting yourself first, or whatever it may be, but criticizing your wish to engage in the Dharma. That happens in society. It happens probably in all societies, but I'd imagine here it quite easily will come about. So when this happens, when you encounter obstacles in this way, there are a couple of then thought processes to go through in accordance with our training here, our training in patience. The first is to look at our own inner response and to guard our inner response as from coming under the influence of the afflictions. And it's very easy, as we've heard throughout this chapter so far. The mind, as soon as what one wants is obstructed, the mind goes to a sense of unhappiness, and then anger can come, wanting to push away the obstacle. So immediately notice this. and thereby apply antidotes. Recognizing, for example, that this person who is perhaps criticizing you or complaining, to recognize they only want to be happy. They are expressing their wish for happiness. They are asking you to act in accordance with their wishes because they just want to be happy. And they are thereby not only expressing a wish for happiness, but also an ignorance that's confused ignorance about the actual causes of happiness. So understanding then that this person before you only wants to be happy, but their mind is dominated by ignorance, that will give you space for your mind to stay relaxed, to not get afflicted, and to rather generate compassion. Compassion being the wish, may this being not suffer. May they gain freedom from the mind of ignorance. May they come to understand the actual causes of happiness. So in this way, when one encounters an obstacle, and in this case it's an obstacle to engage in the practice of the Dharma, one is immediately turning to the Dharma that you've heard, relying on the meditations you've done, and applying that. Second stream of thought will be, this life is just one amongst many. How my next lives will go depend on the causes I'm accumulating now. When this life ends, all that I've acquired, including my relationships with others, will be left behind. And I will go to my next life empty-handed and alone. Therefore, my accumulation of virtue is of great importance. My embracing of the opportunity of the Dharma, attending the teachings, doing meditation is of great importance. So these are two ways of thinking that one will engage in. Wanting to still go in teachings, but responding to the person before you in a way that's in accordance with the Dharma. And then, hopefully with these two ways of thinking, you'll be able to have a conversation and come down to an agreement that everyone's happy with. An agreement that, in terms of your ongoing attendance of teachings, engaging in meditation and so forth, how much, how often and so forth, in a way that produces harmony. As well as you are strengthening your understanding of the Dharma through cultivating it or through developing it in your mind right now in the face of this obstacle, in this face of adversity. So there are these two key points here. And I encourage you to rely on both. To rely on both requires hearing teachings and reflecting on them. But to do so in a way that does bring harmony in your relationships too. So this is important. So really what I've just expressed here, in relation also to the fourth line in that verse, that when one encounters obstacles in hearing teachings, doing meditation and so forth, getting angry in response to not being able to engage in virtue, it seems a little silly. Because we're wanting to attend teachings, we're wanting to do meditation, to have a healthier mind, to have a more virtuous mind. So getting angry in the face of an obstacle, it's a little silly. So bearing that in mind, be skillful whenever encountering obstacles. Now the 61st verse, which is its part, comes together. If the very purpose and meaning of my life was to be wasted by solely committing negativities, what use would this life be? So the first, in English, the first line and half of the second line. If the very purpose and meaning of my life. So what is the purpose or meaning of the life of a bodhisattva? It is, in brief, to accumulate and purify. What does that mean, to accumulate and purify? It means to strengthen one's habituation to virtuous ways of thinking, becoming ever more wholesome, ever more virtuous, and thereby one's afflictions becoming proportionately weaker. That, in brief, is the purpose or the meaning of the life of a bodhisattva. If the very purpose and meaning of my life was to be wasted by solely committing negativities. So this then, linking this with the previous verse, because these two go together, if one spends this precious opportunity to accumulate virtue and purify non-virtue by getting angry when we encounter obstacles, by getting angry in our place of work, in our endeavors for our success in business or to accumulate wealth. This is contradictory to the very purpose or meaning of one's life. So again, the purpose of this life is to strengthen our habituation to virtue, so one becomes ever more naturally virtuous, and thereby ever less inclined to the afflictions. But if we waste this opportunity by solely committing negativities, we will not only lose this opportunity to accumulate virtue, but we will be strengthening our non-virtue. And what virtue we have accumulated, this will be consumed by the non-virtue that will continue to predominate within us. And Shantideva ends this verse, like the one before, with a rhetorical question. What use would this life be? We all want to be happy, we all want to be free of suffering, but if we spend this life strengthening our habituation to afflictions, to anger, to competitiveness, to jealousy, and so forth, what was the use of this life? We are going to end up leaving this life with a stronger weight of non-virtue. This really is a wasted opportunity. We all want to be happy. Embrace this opportunity, turn away from what has no value, and cultivate our habituation to minds of virtue. Let's summarize this verse then. Bodhisattvas are very clear on what the purpose or the meaning of their life is, which, as I've expressed earlier, as accumulation and purification. And why accumulation and purification? Because this is the means by which the Bodhisattva will benefit others as well as themselves. It's through the strengthening of their habituation to the various virtuous minds of the Dharma and thereby weakening their habituation to the afflictions that they are growing as a spiritual practitioner and thereby can be of ever greater benefit to others. So therefore, for them it is very clear that if an affliction such as anger or competitiveness, pride, jealousy arises, this is contradictory to the very purpose of their life. This then, when they hear a verse such as this, will reinforce what they saw in the previous verse, the need to focus on what has abiding value and not be distracted by what really has no value, what is deceptive in its presentation of having value. So for ourselves then, not as bodhisattvas, but as at least those who hold in our heart this wish to become bodhisattvas, in brief, we need to focus on virtue and purification. This in brief. What it comes down to is to do our best not to come under the influence of the afflictions, and certainly not anger, recognizing there's never a valid reason to respond with anger. We all want a long life, but what is the point of having a long life if one is just accumulating ever more non-virtue? One will leave this life in a dangerous situation. So for ourselves then, rather, we should learn to be satisfied with a simpler, more peaceful life, a life of fewer needs and more contentment, and rather focus on opening our hearts and developing compassion, and developing a wealth of value, of good qualities, and thereby enriching our mind with the Dharma. This is far greater than anything that can be gained from the material world. That brings us to the 62nd verse. Since it leads to the decline of sentient beings, should I not be angry with those who disparage me? Then why, when another is spoken to with contempt, do you not get similarly enraged? So here in the first two lines, Shantideva is presenting an all too common justification for anger. I am getting angry for your benefit. So the meaning of these two lines, since it leads to the decline of sentient beings, should I not be angry with those who disparage me? So I forget which translation, but in one of the published books, they've inserted in the first line the word faith, which is what it means. So it may be inserted, it's not in the Tibetan, since it leads to the decline of the faith of sentient beings. What this means is, if someone is talking badly about you or even to you, but in particular about you, in the earshot of others, and they criticizing you, they're complaining either to you or about you, other people who hear this, their trust in you, or faith in you, their respect for you will be harmed, will decline. And through their trust or faith or respect in you declining, your potential to be of benefit to them will be harmed, as well as the virtue they have accumulated will also be harmed. Why? Because they now will be engaging in gossip and criticism. So this then leads to the second line, should I not be angry at those who disparage me? Because the justification is, these people who are disparaging me are harming my reputation, and thereby they're harming my capacity to benefit. They are also, because they are criticizing me, they are accumulating non-virtue. Therefore, I need to put them in their place so that they stop creating non-virtue. And here, a person is justifying their anger, either in the moment or certainly afterwards, if they're needing to explain their red face and their bulging eyes and their harsh words. And they will all too often justify it by, it's for the sake of others that I got angry. To make sure this is very clear, I'll talk as if, like from my perspective, if this were to happen. So if someone were to criticize me, wag their finger, stand up here, wag their finger, say their thing, and now I'm in front of all of you, and I'm thinking, well, if I just say nothing or I just laugh it off, then you may well think I'm agreeing with what he's saying because I'm not counteracting it or responding to it. And now this person who's criticizing me is accumulating non-virtue. Others then thinking, maybe they have a point, are also thereby creating non-virtue. So therefore, I'm justified in getting angry. I'm justified with putting them in their place. Shantideva touched on this or covered this several verses before in terms of dealing with dealing with speech from others and not responding with anger, including in terms of it damaging our livelihood. So to bring that together with this here, if I'm criticized, and now I'm thinking not only will people around me accumulate non-virtue because they think I must be agreeing what this person is saying must be true because I'm not standing up and defending myself. Therefore, everyone ends up accumulating non-virtue. And not only that, and now relating to what came in an earlier verse, I will not be respected. I will not receive offerings. My livelihood will be lost. I may have to leave. And now I'm going to be homeless and hungry. And so therefore, I need to, therefore I am justified to respond forcefully. In other words, one is justifying one's anger because of one's potential material loss and harm to one's reputation, and using as justification, it's for the good of others. I'm protecting their virtue. Then the answer from Shantideva, then why, when another is spoken to with contempt, do you not get similarly enraged? So here again, Shantideva poses another rhetorical question, so as to challenge by means of a consequence the false justification of the afflictions. Because the reality is, everywhere in our world, at every moment, there are many people being criticized. That one person criticizing another, criticizing a group, this is happening continuously everywhere. It is very commonplace. So why, ask yourself, why is this particular criticism touching you so? When all these others, they pass you by. Here, again, this consequence is used to challenge our misapprehension of what has value. Because we, again, getting caught up in mere words, placing meaning to them that is exaggerated beyond what they actually possess. We need to rather, through practicing genuine patience, see these interactions in their true perspective, and rather recognize what has value, and this will guide us to respond with patience, love, compassion, and wisdom. The 63rd verse. If you can be patient with those without faith, as their lack of faith depends on other factors, then why can you not be patient with those who speak unkindly, as it depends on the arisal of the afflictions? So the 63rd verse builds on the 62nd. So the order of the Tibetan and the English is quite mixed here. So we start with the English second line. As their lack of faith depends on other factors. So when one is criticizing, when someone is being criticized, because this is now linking with the second verse, or building on the 62nd verse. When someone is being criticized, for that person to be criticized is dependent on a variety of factors, such as the person who is being criticized is almost certainly not free of faults. So therefore there are, that is one amongst a variety of factors required for someone to be criticized, and therefore for there to be a lack of faith or trust. So this is, as their lack of faith or trust depends on other factors. Other factors being, for example, the person being criticized is not free of fault, and therefore there is basis for there to be a lack of faith. So we're staying in the English, the second line. The second line in the English, which is, again, it's building on what was presented in the verse before. So the verse before ended with the consequence that you do not respond in the same way as when you are criticized as when someone else does. So pointing this out. And here now building on this, it says that the person who is being criticized, whether yourself or another, they are almost certainly not free of fault. And so therefore, that they are being criticized can hardly be said to be entirely surprising, because they are not free of fault. So therefore, to become unhappy or angry because you or anyone is being criticized is really silly, in that what is being pointed out is a fault that this person has. Or even if the person lacks the fault that is being criticized, they have others anyway. So, and furthermore, by you getting upset about this, you're just exposing your own faults. So this is the meaning of, as their lack of faith, because the lack of faith comes from the criticism, depends on other factors, such as the person being criticized is not free of fault. So therefore, you can argue that there is criticism, there is validity for the lack of faith. There's validity behind that criticism. So read the whole verse, and then Geshe explains now all the lines, but again, the order is a bit mixed up. If you can be patient with those without faith, as their lack of faith depends on other factors, then why can you not be patient with those who speak unkindly, as it depends on the arisal of the afflictions? So firstly, just to repeat a little of what was said before, in relation to the second line. When someone is criticized, that person is a basis for the criticism, in the sense that they have faults. So therefore, you can understand that this criticism is understandable, and therefore you can be patient with that criticism. Yes, this person is being said, you have this fault, and that fault is there. So that's okay. You can understand that. So this is now, for us in English, the first line. If you can be patient with those without faith, because you're understanding that the criticizer is pointing out faults in the criticized. Now into the last two lines. Why can you not be patient with those who speak unkindly, as it depends on the arisal of the afflictions? So the first two lines are looking at the criticized, the person being criticized. Now the third and fourth line is looking at the criticizer. Here, you're being encouraged to understand. So in the first two lines, you're encouraged to understand the criticized does have faults. Perhaps or probably the fault being pointed out, and if not that one, others. Now you're being guided to look at the criticizer. And why is the criticizer criticizing? Because they are not free of faults. Their mind is afflicted. So if you can be understanding of the criticized, because yes, they do have some faults, you should also be understanding with the criticizer, because they too have faults, namely afflictions. As it depends, so the third line in the Tibetan is our fourth line, as it depends on the arisal of the afflictions. So their criticizing, their criticism, comes from having an afflicted mind. It comes from a mind lacking the qualities of the Dharma to be patient themselves, and thereby are engaging in criticism. And then the final line again presents the question, why can you not be patient with those who speak unkindly? Because you can be patient with those criticized, but you should also be patient therefore. So if you can be patient with those who are criticized, or about those who are criticized, you should be patient with the criticizer. Tonight then, further reasons to be utilized in the cultivation of patience has been presented. So I want to repeat what has been said several times, and you've heard actually many times over the years, that the way to change your mind is by coming to hear the Dharma, to hear the reasons, and to then take those reasons and reflect on them, meditate on them. This is the way to radically transform your mind. This is how Bodhisattvas become Bodhisattvas, and this is the technique that the Bodhisattvas move through the paths and eventually the grounds. An untrained mind responds in a habituated way. An untrained mind that has heard a lot of Dharma teachings will only be able to give rise to the thought of, I should be patient right now, but the mind is already upset. So if you find yourself in this position, the solution is to take these reasons that have been presented over these 63 verses, summarize those reasons down into something manageable, and reflect on them in various contexts, imagining yourself in various contexts that you have actually been in, as well as that you expect to be in, and use these reasons, understanding how to deal with your own mind skillfully. Because many reasons have been presented thus far. And by summarizing those reasonings in a way that is manageable for you, and then role-playing situations that you've actually lived, and see how I could have responded more skillfully. And doing this again and again, you're training your mind so that when you do encounter those same circumstances, and we know that they will come about again, one can respond skillfully. This is what Bodhisattvas have done. A mere aspiration does not lead to the transformation of the mind. Relying on reasoning, understanding how one's mind works, and thereby changing the workings of our mind, this is how eventually liberation is achieved, and long before that, qualities such as generating bodhicitta arise. So this is why when His Holiness, knowing that the need people have to develop patience and the yearning they have to be patient, to not be angry, His Holiness encourages the study and the training in this chapter, using the reasons that are presented here, not just a mere expression of aspiration, but using your intelligence, your wisdom. The 6 practices, or done by Bodhisattva, the 6 perfections, are all of great importance. Here we're focusing on that of patience, having looked at that, in particular, most recently at ethics, and before that, generosity. And these 3 are all required. We know we need to cultivate generosity to accrue virtue. We need to be ethical, so as to not harm others, to stay within the realms of what is virtuous. And it's imperative that we are also patient, because life is challenging. And it's not an easy life, even if one is trying to be virtuous, if one is trying to be a good person, trying to help others. We know when you're practicing generosity, when one is trying to be there for those in need, to help those in need, they may well show ingratitude. They may well show greed, wanting ever more from you. And if one lacks the quality of patience, one will easily give up. The virtue you accumulated can easily be lost by getting angry at this person. And likewise, trying to be ethical, keeping the mind within the realms of what is ethical, is difficult if one is not also training in patience. So therefore, this training in patience is incredibly important. It requires the foundations of ethics and generosity, but it also adds to one becoming ever more ethical and being able to be more generous. And this practice of patience is something that's indispensable in our world. Whether one is a Buddhist, whether one is of another religion or not religious at all, everyone needs a mind that can deal with life's challenges and hardships without being overwhelmed, without becoming negative and unhappy. So by training your mind in the way that's presented here, you will become happier. So therefore I encourage you to train in the way that I just said. Go back over the text, get together the reasons, reflect on them in relation to real life examples for you, and cultivate this skill. And as you become ever more skilled in patience, others will see this. They will see the change within you, and they will almost certainly reach out to you. And whether they are Buddhists or not will make no difference. They'll be thereby receptive to what you have to say. You will not be preaching to them. They'll be coming to you because they've seen the change within. So earlier in the text, we looked at, I think it's from maybe verse 11, and the patience of willingly accepting suffering. So this is the hardships that we experience in life. And now there's been a far larger section started maybe around verse 35, which is looking at dealing with hardships in our interactions with others. So within these sections, there are many reasons presented. And by, again, training one's mind in that, developing one's intelligence, one's wisdom, one will become slowly ever more skilled through this habituation in dealing with challenging interactions and life's hardships. So I encourage you to train in this way, and benefit will come. Then thank you. We can conclude there for this week. There aren't teachings next week because of the nunnery event and the busyness with that. So next week is a break. So we'll see you all again in 2 weeks' time. Thank you.